And that is the deputy sports editor that you see right there on the screen, Andre Fernandez of the Miami Herald. And Andre, I definitely appreciate you being able to take some time here to talk to us about South Florida football and everything that's happening. And, the big thing, I think one of the big things that people are coming off from this past weekend is Homestead pulling off the upset on Columbus. And I know you were there at that game. And let's talk about that one first here and everything. And all that with that particular game, because I know Columbus, defending state champ in Class 4M, what's happening now for the Explorers, and what kind of momentum boost does this give the Broncos now going for the rest of the season here with about 4 weeks left?
Yeah, well, Josh, thanks for having me on the show, first of all. And yeah, I mean, it's a huge momentum boost. And it's funny because people keep saying upset, and yeah, it kind of was, but in a way, it was kind of a reminder to a lot of people because remember, Homestead was in the state final in 3M last year, and I think the way they started the season, losing that game in the beginning to Palmetto, and then really haven't had a lot of signature wins since then, but have been building momentum. I think if people kind of forgot about them a little bit down here, as them still being one of the state title contenders, and it reminded me of last year when almost at the same point in the season, they went in and just throttled Northwestern, forced 6 turnovers. At the time, Northwestern obviously was a little more on the level than they've been this year. And it really just springboarded their whole run to state. And this could be the same type of victory for them. I mean, they intercepted Alberto Mendoza, the quarterback of Columbus, 4 times in that game, key turnovers. They were running the football well with Isaac Brown. Josh Townsend, their quarterback, was sharp. The 2025 kid receiver that they have, Cortez Mills, one of the best in the state, that combination was working again. Their defense was playing well. So basically, it all came together for Homestead. And interesting, too, that they fell behind 10-0 in that game and easily could have started to spiral for them. Instead, they came back, picked up some momentum, and now they're looking just as good as they did last year. And for Columbus, it's a little bit of a reality check, a little bit of a gut check now, not a reality check because they are still the top team. I think going in, they were the favorite to maybe try and defend that state title, and they still can. They've had some good wins. They went up to Jesuit and won that game, had some quality wins at the beginning of the season. Their defense is still one of the best overall down here. I think it's just more on offense where they need to kind of figure it out. They're still, losing Cedric Irvin. They haven't run the ball, I think, quite like they did the year before. Mendoza's still sharp at times. I think I overheard on the sideline, he might have had a little bit of a finger issue that night. So maybe might have been affecting his touch a little bit. Didn't look like his typical self, but still plenty of time for them to regroup. They're going to be in the playoffs. They're going to win that district probably easily the way they have the last few years. So I could see them still being the top, the team to beat, at least on this side of 4M for sure. And this is a good wake-up call for them.
No, absolutely. And let's shift gears here because there's other top teams that we got to get to here. Miami Central, who just got by on a squeaker there with Miami Northwestern. And then, they're sitting there 3-2 there and on the season, but still, one of the favorites to win 2M. And then, of course, then you got Shemana Madonna still sitting there and 1M, who is just literally every team they seem to touch, they find a way to dominate them or outside of the Coconut Creek game. I mean, outside of that one, I mean, they find ways to dominate teams really at the end of the day. And of course, they're the favorite. They're sitting there and 1M. So, and of course in St. Thomas Aquinas, they're still doing their thing there in 3M. So, when we look at the other teams here in South Florida football, especially, Miami-Dade and Broward, Andre, is this just shaping up to where a lot, we believe that we will see, a couple of teams here, do the 5-peat in terms of Miami Central and Aquinas doing that this year. Do you think that is going to realistically happen?
I think that there's still a chance, but it's definitely they're not going to be that as easy as people think. I mean, I think, we just spoke about Homestead and they're a potential threat. I mean, St. Thomas is still the top dog in 3M. There's no doubt about it. They're rolling right now. They have the depth, all the weapons they have on offense. Their defense is still stacked. But there's contenders, they're Coconut Creek that you mentioned hung with Chaminade. I think that was a kind of a statement to say we're here too. Their defense is really good. They've had some good performances already this season. So that's another team in 3M, up in Orlando, Edgewater, Jones, those teams will be somewhere in that Final Four or at least mix, contending as well. So it's not an easy path, but yeah, I'd say St. Thomas still a front runner. And then Central, we'll find out more about them this weekend. I mean, the Northwestern has had kind of a down year. They're 2-5, but they still have talent. They're just young. They're just rebuilding kind of there, and I think but they could be dangerous. They could be dangerous in that 2M mix. But Norland is the big threat. They're 6-0. Yes, they almost got beat by Booker T. It was kind of a test for them too. But this is what they loaded up for this offseason. They brought in 27 transfers. Their defensive line, probably the biggest I've ever seen Norland have. Enio Yapur, the quarterback, we've seen him in the past play at the state level with Champagnat, and now be a good one, for them. They went up to Lakeland and lit them up 6 touchdowns and so forth. But this is the game. I think Norland is the biggest threat, at least when you look at them pound for pound. They have a team that can finally contend with Central. And this week's game on Friday night is going to be very telling. It's not going to be the end all because they could meet again in the playoffs, but I think it's going to be telling on just how much competition they have in 2M.
No, absolutely. I'm glad you brought Norland up because they have definitely been playing lights out football down there in South Florida. And, as you mentioned, the game this week, of course, a big one there at Trash Pal Friday night. That's a 7:30 kickoff. But when you look at all these collected teams, there's still some, again, the smaller schools, when I had one, I don't think we talk about big enough. A lot of on is like there's a team, True North, who a couple of weeks ago went over to Naples and beat the defending 1S state champion in First Baptist. So, and there's a team that, that was a state semifinalist last year in Bradford that's making the trip down the True North this week. What would you tell a team like Bradford who's coming into South Florida territory? They kids from the rural side coming in to play a team from the city. What would you tell those kids? Because it's a very interesting matchup how that got on the schedule.
I mean, I'd say don't underestimate them because, last year they looked outclassed against the Chaminade, but, and still Chaminade is far ahead of them, but I think they've narrowed the gap a little bit. And this is a program they're not that old. I think it was only I want to say maybe the 3rd or 4th year of varsity football for them. And they've got some kids. They've shown it. Even down here, they've got some quality wins. Zach Katz at quarterback. Their offense is good. I mean, this is a Bradford team that's very stingy. They don't give up points. I know they're on some crazy streak. I think Larry Bluestein told me like 3 years or something of like very few points allowed. But it's still a road trip. Still have to come down here in Miami and get it done. And this will be telling because this will show for True North especially how much further along are they in the development of their program. Are they a realistic contender? I mean, they look like at least in 1M they can be a Final Four team again, like they were last year. But can they take that step? Can they be a little more competitive with Chaminade? I think Bradford will definitely be that gauge for them to see how far along they are.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, go up the road I-95 into Broward County. You got Plantation American Heritage sitting there doing their thing. And in week 6, they did not dominate Cardinal Gibbons, that's been a team that has been like the contender, but it seems like Cardinal Gibbons may have taken a step back here in terms of things. So would it be safe to say, outside of Miami Norland, maybe a potential challenger to Miami Central is that American Heritage team, maybe another challenger that could throw Miami Central off course this year and stop that potential of a 5 Pete, is that safe to say on that one?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought them up because it's funny we get caught up in all the competition that Central has in the region, and we forget Heritage is just as good and could probably win a few other classes if they were in them, just with the talent they have. Heritage, they coming into the year they were a little younger. They lost I think about 27, 28 seniors, which is rare for them to lose so many at once, but it didn't mean they were any less talented. And this team now is built to last. I mean, you look at all their stars, they're all sophomores, they're juniors, even a few freshmen sprinkled in. This team, if they keep it together, is going to be good for the next 3 years to the point where it'll be interesting to see. Can they beat a team like Central this season? I think by the end of the year, you can't call these kids inexperienced anymore. I think they're going to be right there with them. A big telling point is going to be their offense. I think, their quarterback, Dia Bell, this is his first year at starter. He's starting to get a little more comfortable in the offense, making better decisions. How will he be by late November in some of these games? I think that's going to be very telling as well. But yeah, Heritage, very capable. Against Gibbons, you saw just the speed difference. I mean, they were so much faster. They were so much better on the field than them. And I think that's what's made them get to the point where they're just clearly better than their rival right now. Gibbons will still be a playoff team, but I don't see anybody really challenging Heritage in their region. And then it just comes down to matchups. If they get a Central, just like last season, are they the top 2 seeds and then they're facing off for the title again? They might be just as prepared to go down to the wire with them like they did a year ago.
No, absolutely, and of course, real quick, Andre, any surprises so far that that you have seen so far down in South Florida that maybe that people aren't talking about right this second, or is it just more of the usual suspects?
It's mostly the usual suspects, but I again, I think I have to go back to that Creek team. I don't think a lot of people were expecting. We thought they'd be better. I think the one team we all sort of anointed as the sleeper was Monarch, and they've been pretty good. They're 6-1. There's still a chance. There's still a chance for them to do something in Region 3-4M. But I think it's Creek, man. I think they've beaten teams like Western, Plantation, solid playoff teams. And then what they did against Shaman, I know they lost, but they were within a possession of knocking off the team that's ranked third in the country right now. Creek has never been a program that's been on that kind of level. So they have a good defense. They match up well with you. I think if they're able to avoid turnovers and shut down, they can run the football too. They have a couple kids on that side of the ball and a quarterback, James Hayes, that's kind of underrated. It's one of those that be careful because we've seen years where St. Thomas kind of gets bit by a team like a Deerfield Beach or a Miramar that they're always going as the favorites, but that team just does enough on that day to beat them. Creek could be that type of team in the regional playoffs that maybe if they were to meet maybe in the regional final could give Aquinas a hard time and maybe surprise us all.
No, absolutely. Well, that's about all the time we've got here, Andre, and I appreciate you being able to stop by here a few minutes in your busy schedule as the deputy sports editor of the Miami Herald, and definitely check out Andre's work at miamiherald.com, and we appreciate your time, and we'll see you around on the fields and everything else around the high school football.
Definitely will. Thanks, Josh. Thanks for having me, and let me know anytime I can be on there.
Oh, no, appreciate it, Andre. Thank you so much. All right, that was Andre Fernandez of the Miami Herald joining us here on the South Florida Blitz.